This is my 2016 1.4T Zafira Tourer. It's got another coolant leak. I recently replaced this pipe, which is a very common failure point. Check out my link in the description below for that replacement pipe. Sadly though, it almost immediately developed another coolant leak, and this time it was coming from the header tank. As you can see here, it's dripping from the large pipe at the bottom. Now I wasn't sure if it was the pipe itself had maybe split, or it was more likely the tank, as people have said that the tanks split and crack on these. So I decided to buy a new tank and replace it. Now you could take this big pipe off and all the coolant would flow out and go down onto the drive. But it was a bit messy and it would make the engine bay very wet. And if I had subsequent leaks or was on refilling it and running it, could I be sure where the coolant was coming from? So the right way to drain the coolant is to drain it from the radiator tap. It's on the driver's side if you're in the UK. I've got a couple of persuasion tools here which I'll mention about in a minute. And if you look underneath the driver's side, you'll find a radiator tap. Now it should just be a standard kind of release, anti-clockwise to release, but it was very tight. So you can see this flat surface here. I just used the flathead screwdriver and a very, very gentle tap. It didn't need very much at all, and it came undone. Now, like any Friday night, when you've had a few beers and you try and take a leak, it just kind of goes everywhere, or at least maybe that's my problem. But I put the kind of container underneath to kind of capture all the coolant, and it just seemed to go everywhere. The bulk of it though does come out just parallel to the wheel there where I've captured it. I'll show you later this is where how much of the coolant is kind of captured in there. Anyway, that's the coolant that's drained out, and now we can start to remove some pipes. I just think it's a cleaner and better way of doing it rather than releasing that pipe with the coolant still in the tank. So first off, this little tube comes off, which I think is a pressure valve. I'm not entirely sure, but that just pops off and I just pull it to one side. Next up is this big coolant pipe here, and you've got the one on top. Now I use some locking nose pliers, which are really useful for this. I couldn't recommend them enough. This is the angle I went in. Set them nice and tight, lock them up, and you can just wiggle off the connector or the Jubilee clip, and then you can just pull off the tube on the pipework. Anyway, so here's the pipework, and I gave this a really good look because I wasn't too sure if the leak was coming from the bottom here. The pipe is in really good shape. Like I said, it's a 2016 year, this one. The pipe looked fine, stretching it, pushing it. I couldn't see any kind of leaks or splits that might be where the coolant was coming from. It generally looked in really good shape. So I don't think this is the culprit. Next off, I released this little metal clip, which is on the side of the coolant bottle. Just use a flathead screwdriver and push it up. Comes up really easily. I then put it on one of these little magnetic things that I've got in the garage. I can't recommend these enough. Really useful for just keeping little metal clips and sump bolts and washers. Otherwise they easily get lost when you're reassembling. I took the top pipe off. I forgot to film that one, but you can see how to do that on my other clip when I replace the other coolant pipe. And then it's a case of just kind of pulling it back towards you and then kind of wiggling it towards the driver's side. There is enough space. You just have to kind of wiggle it and just go gently. Don't force it. And here it popped through. Here I was thinking, should I come across the top of the engine cover or should I come directly out of where it is? I decided to come directly out of where it is. I could push that loom down. There was just enough room. And then, yeah, here it pops out. Again, don't force it. Just keep wiggling it. It will come really slowly. Make sure that nothing is grabbing onto any of the cables, but it does come out. And here you can see all the coolant has crystallized at the bottom. So I think it was split or it's cracked at the bottom here, and it was running along this tube at the bottom and then dripping rather than the pipe work. So you can see it flowing out underneath. This wouldn't come from when I was topping up occasionally when it was going low. I couldn't get it there. Anyway, this is the new replacement coolant bottle I got. And notice the big difference here. This was from eBay. It has a coolant level sensor. My original one didn't have it. I'd be interested to know in the comments if yours has it. Mine's an SE spec from 2016 pre-facelift, and it doesn't even look like there's supposed to be a sensor there. So I got a little worried when I took this out. I ripped the sensor off. Was there a connector there that I'd ripped off when I was pulling it and wiggling out the coolant tank? But there wasn't, which I'll show you in a minute. The tank was around £30 from eBay. I didn't buy a genuine one for this. I felt there was no need. That said, there are a couple of kind of annoyances with the eBay one, which I'll get into in just a second. But here's the new tank, and hopefully it'll be good to go in. Now here's the kind of connector kind of slot that the coolant tank kind of clips into. So you pull it back and then out. Now I found no wiring, no looms or anything like that to connect in a coolant temperature sensor. There was nothing around here. So do let me know if yours has it, but mine certainly didn't. So when refitting, you need to be aware of this slot to have the kind of tank slightly forward and then push it back. I'm sure most Zafira owners won't have any problem finding the slots, if you know what I mean. Anyway, to refit, I decided to move this cable loom out the way, just to give me a bit more space. I just need some pliers at the bottom here, just to pinch that in and just allow that to be pushed up. It then allowed me just to kind of push this loom a little bit underneath this clip, which just gave me a little bit more space refitting, because that coolant temperature sensor actually kind of made it slightly more difficult to refit. But I just kind of get pushing it and wiggling it and twisting it, and it does go back. So it's held nicely here, and I took my little clip here. But just keep pushing and wiggling. Again, don't force anything here. Don't ram it in. Just go, take your time. It did go. You just have to be slow. Just take your time and just carefully keep pushing it and wiggling it. Here you can see the coolant temperature sensor did get in the way a bit. It was being held and a bit bulky, but I just pushed the loom down a bit, keep wiggling it and poking it and pushing it, and it went through. Once you got it to the back here, it was then quite easy to get to the original slot. And like I say, you have to push it into that slot and push it back. Now, I'm not sure if this is because this was a patent part, it was eBay. Oh, by the way, if you're liking my videos, please do like and subscribe. I really would appreciate it. Like I say, if this was, I think it was an eBay one, it didn't push back as far as I think it should go. And you'll see it when I try to clip it in. It doesn't quite sit as flush back as the original one did. I couldn't get this clip on as much as the original tank. So it was a patent part. It's not a genuine one from Vauxhall. It felt like it was solid. It wasn't moving. It was just slightly out. Be interested to know if you get a genuine one. Does it go all the way far back? Is it different? Does it have the coolant temperature sensor? But yeah, it seemed good enough for refitment. So refitted the top coolant pipe. Just clips on. Should be fine to do that. And then you've got the bottom pipe as well. And then we need to refill it. So here we've got the bottom pipe on. And it's pretty good to be refilled. Assuming, and just remember, double check the radiator tap. You've done that back up underneath the car. This was all the coolant I captured where the earlier video showed it draining out. So you capture a bulk of the coolant with it in that position. Now I only just use what I had in the garage, which is the stuff from Eurocar parts on a 50-50 mix. I have now ordered some genuine GM coolant, which I'm going to dump out of the current coolant and refill it with Vauxhall stuff. This is just what I had in the garage. And I've got a sneaky method for refilling it. Obviously, technically, you're supposed to take off the scuttle, but I get a bit of hose pipe, which is the one I usually connect to my big reel if I'm using it in the garden. And I stick a cone on it, as you've seen here, and stick the pipe in here, and just lift that up and just pour it in. It just saves kind of faffing around with the space underneath. It can be quite difficult. Now, one thing I only noticed when I was refilling it is that the genuine tank has this black mark here for the fill line, which, to be fair, looks like it was just some Vauxhall mechanic has put on a Sharpie and the black pen mark, because here you can see it's not there. Now, there is an arrow on the other side of the tank, but it's quite hard to see. So I think I was just going to use the ridge line, to be honest, as a fill marker. You can also see here it's slightly going uphill. Guessing it's just the angle. I haven't got it quite right from the original tank. It looks like it's fairly level, Maybe just tilted back at the back. That's why it's kind of pooling at the back. But it was what I think fairly level. I couldn't seem to get it any better than that. But it was refilled. It was all watertight, so it was pretty good. I started it up, and yeah, this resolved my leak. It was definitely the tank that had cracked and was leaking. I ran it up to temperature. Started the car initially with the cap off, burped the kind of coolant lines a little bit. Once it had been running for for a couple of minutes, I then put the cap on, and then this job was good to go.